And it says we're going live again. We'll try this out for the second time here. Hey, welcome everyone. It is John the Net Guy. This is show 502. If everything is working right, we are streaming now to YouTube properly. Been having some weird issues, I tell you, lately with the restream. They're really cool because it lets me stream to Facebook and YouTube and X and all these cool places. I don't know if you guys use those as well. I'm going to switch and I'm just going to verify. Trust yet verify. I'm going to verify that we are streaming as intended over on YouTube. I don't usually have to do this, but I want to make sure that we are live. And it is the streaming software. We got 4 people watching on YouTube. Welcome, you guys. I'm going to go ahead and check in the chat and see who we got. Oh, right on. A BC Kamen beat Blind Tech in. He says, hey, I see you. Good to see you, Blind Tech. Thanks for checking in. BC Kamen gave me an audio check. I see and hear you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys for being here. Today is going to be kind of a chill stream. We are going to do a very cool PC build. You see a lot of PC builders build a PC and they don't include a lot of the parts in the total budget. I was actually looking at some PC build parts here and trying to see what I could come up with. I had a friend, same guy that bought Eleanor, came back and said, hey, do you have another machine? He's having so much fun playing World of Warcraft with his kid. He's like, yeah, but my wife doesn't like that the home computer is now the gaming computer, so we're looking at getting one for my kid. Can you come up with something? And it needs to be on a good budget. Oh, but it also has to have all the peripherals. That's like the monitor, keyboard, mouse, and he says even throw in Wi-Fi if you can. So I took it as a challenge. If you take a look at the video description, you're going to see what I was able to come up with. Not only did I come up with a machine that's actually going to game pretty well, it's got some upgrade potential here and there. Again, $550 is the budget. Now, I'm going to have 2 parts that I'm going to sub out only because I don't have the alternative, which I put in there at the time. But they're exactly the same performance. So you're not going to get a difference in performance. So the benchmarks are going to qualify here. And Blind Tech says, I just built 2 PCs lately. Yes, absolutely. We are knocking the PCs out. If this is your first time here, I do a completely live show. It's completely interactive. So you are welcome to join in, ask questions. We've got questions coming in already. I do need to let the Amazon people in. You guys know how this goes. We are live on Amazon, and there's very few shows that I know that do this on so many platforms. So what I need to do is go back to the computer behind me real quick, and I need to pull up the stream that we send off to Amazon. Same show. If you are going to watch on Amazon, thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. It does help. Let me bring this down. There we go. There's that guy. I'm going to bring it down here. If you are looking on Amazon, go ahead and give me a follow. That would be just fantastic if you could. And I'm going to go ahead and check here. The follow button in Amazon is somewhere down in that direction. If you are on Amazon, it's going to have a live carousel with all of the products in it. And here we go. We're going to hit live. Go live. 3, 2, 1. Welcome everyone from Amazon. We are live now on our last and final service with Amazon. Today we're doing a PC build. It's show number 502. This is the $550 budget machine. I'm going to take a small sip here of my coffee and just say it's been a day already. I went to go hook something up over here and I knocked my coffee over and 16 ounces went all over the ground. It's going to be interesting. I used a lot of paper towels to clean that up. But without further ado, I'm going to show you what happens when you click that link down there below, the Shop the Net Guy. You're going to get to a page that looks very similar to this one. And if everything's working, I'll be up here in the corner guiding you along. And if you come down here, you're going to see prior shows. You're going to see other reviews that I've done. We had a great show last week where we did a drag race with micro SD cards, and there was a surprise winner of that one, absolutely. But if you come down here to show 502, this is the component list that we're putting into this PC. Now, why do I have 2 CPUs here? Well, these 2 CPUs, the 5500 and the 5600 GT, are almost perfectly identical. And I actually have the 5600 GT here But this 5500 is going to be within, I think, 100 megahertz of the speed. It doesn't have an iGPU, but look how much you're saving. This one is on sale right now, normally $159, $83. So if you're doing budget builds, you're going to have to get your components on the cheap. So this is a super cheap component. So you can click through here. If you do purchase, in full disclosure, I get a very small single-digit commission, and I do appreciate every one of those. I've got some Team Group T-Force Vulcan memory in here. I've got a B550M. Now, the GPU. We could not budget a expensive GPU in this build. And in fact, the price on this GPU varies wildly depending on where you buy it and when you buy it. So I would recommend looking around on this and shopping for a bit. Make sure you look for an RX 580 2048 SP. That's the number of stream processors. That's actually going to be your budget killer. That's going to be where you could spend $200 or $300, or you can bring it back down under that 550 range. So that's pretty cool too. Now, the case that I picked for this one is actually different than the one that's on here. I don't know if I actually have the case on here. Oh, right, because it doesn't allow me to put it on the program. So we're going to be putting it in a Tough Gaming GT301 case. I'll show you what that looks like here in just a second. It's a very aggressive looking case. Has 3 built-in RGB fans and 1 rear fan. Really nice machine, except, again, it's not on the program, and it's not going to make us hit our budget. So that's the 2 parts that I subbed out was the CPU. I went with a case that I had on hand that I could sell him for cheaper because I got it on sale as well. But if you want to put in, and the one that was supposed to be in here, and I don't know why it didn't come in here, was the Q300L Cooler Master. This case right here is on sale right now, and I believe, did the prices change yet again? This one was 39 bucks. I'll have to bring it up. I'll bring it up here in just a second. I have the link to it. But that case is what's going to keep you under. So if you're looking to hit that 550 budget that I quoted, we have to do a couple little concessions, but we're going to start from there. I'm going to take a quick look back in the chat, make sure I didn't miss anything here. Please switch off Edge, Toucan says. You know what, Toucan, I would, but I use Chrome for my streaming app. It's a web-based streamer that I use with Restream. So I have to have a different browser session going so you don't get my Amazon and all my other stuff and my logins. Circuit Rewind is here. Good to see you, my friend. Just giving a couple, I think 4 drinks there. Very nice. And here we go. Look at that. First PC has all that with an AIO cooler and a SAMA case. SAMA case, that's a good way to save a lot of money. A 3600X with an RX 580. Yeah, very good combinations there. Love that. Blind Tech says Firefox. Yes, I should be using Firefox. Absolutely. I love it. And then I got just to round it all out, I got a suggestion of Opera. So, you know, you can't please everybody, but to get started, let's talk about the parts here. I'm going to go in no particular order here. Let's start out with this Ryzen chip. So this is the 5600 GT. Now the chip's already out of it because it's in the motherboard. And I did that a little bit earlier because I like to test the system. And I'm going to tell you a really sad story about what happened when I was benchmarking this thing earlier today. But this chip is a budget-friendly chip. If you don't have money for a GPU, let's say you got to make that $500 price range, $530 price range, whatever, and you can't afford a GPU at this point, or maybe you're shopping sales, you could get a 5600 GT and use the graphics, the iGPU in it to play Minecraft and a lot of kids games. And then you could add in an RX 580 or something like that in the future. So that's what we're going to start out with. 6 cores, 12 threads, decent chip overall. Again, I started out with, I think it was a 5600 way back in the day, and you're going to get equivalent performance, and this is going to have the iGPU in it. So that's the first product out there. Memory is also a very important decision here. So this is the Team Group. This is the T-Create memory series. Let me open that up real quick. Of course, I knocked down all of my stuff that I have because I have scissors and cutters and all that stuff earlier today. Let me open this up real quick because it does glare really bad on the final video. You guys are helping me make content. Now, when you're shopping for memory, obviously you can buy a lot of different no-name brand memory out on the internet. I tend to like Team Group. We had a good show last week. I'm going to bring you guys here on the top down so we can take a look at this memory. Whoop. So there is the T-Create memory. Now, there's many different speeds and many different sizes. So the memory that I have here is the 16 gig kit with a cast latency of 16. So it's two 8 gig chips and a 3200 mega transfers. So those are some numbers that you may need to know when it comes down to memory. Additionally, this right here, the 32 gigs of 3600, this is an alternative that you could pick up. It is going to perform faster because it's 3600. They marked it megahertz, but honestly, it's mega transfers. And then this is a 2x16. But to make my budget, I got to go with 16 gigs. But that's a nice thing is you could start with 16 gigs and you could always upgrade. So this is going to hit you in that a little bit of an expensive PlayStation, PlayStation maybe a couple games price range, but you're going to get a full gaming PC out of this at this price range. So this is from Team Group, their T-Create. They've got many different models of memory, and I've used pretty much all of them to great success. I haven't had any issues with the T-Create memory. So I'm going to slide these over here. Let's talk about what all of this is going to plug into. So this is a B550 motherboard. So this is the Asus Prime B550 M-A. Now it's going to have 4 DDR4 slots in it. That's important. A lot of your budget boards only have 2, so this is going to have 4 slots, which is going to give you a lot of expansion. It is going to have some heat sink capability here. It's not totally covered like some of them you'll see. It is going to have one of the 16X lanes here for a GPU, but it's not going to have a ton of room. So if you're looking for something that's got more of these larger slots, or if you need an 8X slot, it's not going to have that. It's only going to have these smaller slots in the 16 slot here. So just kind of plan ahead. It is going to have addressable RGB headers and regular RGB. And, I've kind of given up on the regular RGB headers, but until recently, I just added an RGB strip because it was so cheap and I wanted to add some color to a case. So it has capability to do both. It's going to have 4 of your SATA ports here. It's going to have your standard USB. It does not have USB Type-C if that's something you're looking for. So it doesn't have that Type-C header, but it does have USB 3 over here. Taking a look at the questions here. Green's checking in, says, looks like a good AM4 budget build. I don't know. You can't get much for 550 these days. So I was doing my best, and hopefully I hit that. I prefer the 2-slot boards, as 2 slots has the most stable. 4 slots of RAM is unstable, but for budget builds, having an option to go 32 and upgrade is nice. That's a really good point there. A lot of times you have to make concessions. If you can get a 2-slot board, which is less manufacturing for them, less wire for them, less slots for them, and you can get it cheaper, and that's kind of your plan, why not? I'm only going to put 2 sticks of RAM into it, but the other nice thing is you do have those expansion slots, like we said, and you can put those in. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. The one thing I would say that I don't like on this board is the I/O on it. It's a little bit limited. We got 6 total USB ports on the back here. You're going to have your standard audio inputs, DVI, VGA, because we're back in the 90s, and HDMI here. There's no display port on this one either. So it's a little bit dated, but still a very quality motherboard if you're looking for something to build on the AM4 platform. 550 is a great budget motherboard to start with. So that's what we're going on the motherboard. Let's bring you guys back over here. Got to power this all, and to power it, I'm going to go with a trusted Thermaltake 600 watt white. Now, the white series here, Smart series, has gotten a lot of, let's say, fans, and let's also say shade, because, right now, power supplies just vary up and down. It can be up 30% one week, down 20%. It just varies consistently. That's the only thing that's consistent, is it doesn't stay the same. Let me adjust this back out so you can see a little bit more. We'll do an unbox here on this one. So what are we getting on this one? 5-year warranty, Haswell chip ready, continuous power, ultra quiet fan, which is important. It's going to have the 80 plus designation. Now these designations, you've got gold, bronze, silver, platinum. Those are all how efficient the power supply is. They all put the same amount of watts out when you have the rating, but they do it at different efficiencies. Now, if you're not worried about efficiency, get a different one. There are power supply tier lists that you can go with that are going to tell you whether a power supply is of a higher quality, if there's been any problems with it. So the maintainers of that, they don't like the white series, but you know what? I've seen Zach and a lot of other PC builders using these, so I have no problems with them here. So there's the information about it, the different rails, how many amps that it puts out, and then there's the efficiency at the different load ratings. So somewhere around 86% it looks efficient, whereas your Platinums may be over 90% efficient in converting that power. Let's open it up and see what you get in this one. The nice thing on this one is it is cheap right now. You get 600 full watts. And the price on this one, I believe, was about 43 bucks. I got it for $39. So technically I gave you the full price today on there, but I actually watched for a sale and I picked it up. And I do that for a lot of parts. If I see them on a good sale or they dip for a little bit, I'll grab them. It is not a modular power supply, so you're going to get all of the cables connected to it that you have. You're just going to have to deal with that. But if a case has a power supply basement, nobody's going to see them anyway. It is going to have a bunch of zip ties, a couple screws. I'm going to set those off to the side because we're going to use those later. Standard power cord. And then you're going to have the rest of the power supply here packaged. Not a bad looking power supply. Now, if you don't want some of these items showing, and your case may have them, Zach constantly covers these in vinyl, so you could definitely do that. The label's not even quite straight on this side. I don't know if you guys can see that. So again, small things, but we're looking at budget PSUs. Okay, just taking a look here. The tier list I use said that Thermaltake Smart. Yeah, they were saying that it's on the F tier list, which is avoid. Again, if you go through the actual comments and you look at some of these, other manufacturers, have in the past had problems, and so they just kind of blacklist them for whatever series it is. I think Aries Game was, supplying different power supplies during COVID when there was a crunch, and they got mad at them because they weren't exactly the same rating. And it gets to be, use what you feel comfortable with. Again, are you going to notice the difference in this in 5 years? You got 5-year warranty on it. Is it going to blow up other components? No, I think these are safe, so I'm not too worried about it. And again, a lot of the other builders are going to use those as well. I'm going to use the opportunity here to put a lot of the manuals that we get in the power supply box. I do that when I'm delivering PCs. Sometimes I keep the motherboard box, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just shove them all in the power supply box, especially because it's a great spot to tell them where their power cord is. And then I know that they've opened it when they get home, so they've got that. So that is from Thermaltake. Hey, there's another builder out there. Let's take a look here. PC Tech Hustle checking in, says, hey, yo. Hey, yo to you too. That PSU is pretty sketch. I used to buy them, but stop, dude, how bad they are. Have had over 5 die on me. Okay, well, that's different. I haven't had that experience, but we'll try it out. And again, I do warranty all my machines here. Hops and Bruce checking in and goes, you trust that AliExpress GPU, hand orange covering eyes, hand orange covering eyes. Yeah, technically that 24E8 SP GPUs, I've had good luck with them. My daughter plays Fortnite, loves hers. So I don't know. To each their own, they say, right? We're getting to a budget here. We're not building the Mona Lisa, as they say. Let's take a look at some of the other parts here. Now, keyboard and mouse, I actually don't have this one in this box right now. It's actually being used over at our church. We use it as a backup keyboard and mouse. I showed you this on a previous show. I just wanted to show you that we have it here. Red Thunder is the brand here. It's a wireless USB-C charging keyboard and mouse. The one thing I would say about it that was difficult at our church is sometimes our set is a little dark and the keys are not backlit as bright. So the volunteer that was asking about it, we swapped it out with a Logitech Pebble that has white on black or black on white keys, and they liked it better, but we kept this as a backup. It worked for several services and I had no problems with it. So for $37, I think is what it's 30. Let's take a look. The Red Thunder is $39. You get a keyboard and RGB mouse. I wasn't too sad. One thing I'll point out about this Red Thunder, it goes to sleep a lot. So if you're, using the mouse, you stop, you come back to use the mouse. Well, it's saving battery power by not being on, and you just have to tap it once and then it wakes up. That was a little annoying during services because it would go to sleep in like 2 minutes. It's got a real short timer. And then we'd have to click on it to wake it back up to click on things. That's the only drawback I would say on it. In being USB rechargeable, you don't go through any batteries. Now, I use a lot of Logitech brand stuff here. This one was rechargeable, required no batteries, and that's really cool if you're in a production scenario where you can charge it back up. And I can actually leave it plugged into USBs, but if I need to unplug it to be away, I can do that. So kind of get the best of both worlds. We're arguing about NASs here and PSUs. Now we're arguing about the PSUs. And, again, it's a great conversation to have. I would say if you haven't, join the chat here and let us know what you think on this PSU here. Only use your best 2 sets of DIMMs, Green was saying. And that's actually really good on AM4 here. So if you have DIMMs that you're buying in pairs, use them together. I don't know. I have to scroll up to see what you said earlier about that. But that's what I know of them is try not to mix and match. Don't have a pile of memory sitting there. Try to use your best 2 sets if you can. You don't want to mix and match 3200 and 3600 either, or different brands. So, oh, here we go. Coffee's coming in and says, I've used the Thermaltakes most of the readily in stock PSUs at big box stores for the last decade. Haswell ready. And several in use with no complaints or issues. So yeah, again, we have experiences that kind of color or taint our views, I think. So that's the Red Thunder keyboard. I do have to add Wi-Fi to this one, and that is kind of my day, how it's going. Let me one sec, put that back. So this is actually the Wi-Fi card that I had available to me. Now I do have a TP-Link for $14, and in the build guide here, but they're basically the same. They're going to be dual band cards. They're going to be Wi-Fi 5. They're not Wi-Fi 6, but you're getting them for $14. The one thing I would say that this doesn't have that you might want to consider spending a little bit more on is get a Wi-Fi 6 if you know you have that as your access point, and try to find one with Bluetooth. A lot of the newer ones come with Bluetooth. I had this one in stock, and again, I'm trying to hit a price point, so I'm going to go with this one today. The nice thing about it, it's got integrated antennas, and it only takes one of your small PCI Express. And to be truly honest, installing the other cards where you actually have to take the little tiny, NVMe interface there and connect it up to the B key, A key, whatever key it is, right? And then you got to try to snap in the antennas. Having this thing all in one, you drop it into a PCI Express slot, you put the antennas on it, and you go. I am curious if it has a low profile slot cover, which bingo, it does. So there's your low profile slot cover if you have, gosh forbid, a server you're putting this thing in. And then here's the 2 antennas. Now, if you got 2 antennas, I'm guessing they're using a different band for each antenna. So you've got those available to you as well. So we're going to install that last. I'd like to get everything set up and do it on wired. But we will come in and install this last. But that is going to give you a maximum of 750 megabit because it's going to use both bands. You can get other ones with more channels that will go faster, but this is kind of a concession, again, to stay in budget right now. So that is the PCI Express card we're going through. Almost through all of the parts. There's 2 left here. Now this is the RX 580 I went with. I do have an RX 580 in the video description here. You can go click on that one. That's the one that's on Amazon. If you're using the 5600 GT CPU, the GPU is optional. And that's if, you're not building this for just web browsing, you're building this for gaming, then I would go with some sort of GPU. The RX 580 here, it is a white one. And I'll tell you why I'm going with this white, bright, wrong color GPU in here, because I had a really pretty MSI that I was going to throw in for him. That's the same thing. It's an RX 580, 8 gig. It spent a lot of time in the mines of Ethereum and was trying to make a lot of money because the fan stopped working. And I started looking at it, and I'm going to show, and I don't know if it's going to come out here, but right before the show, I was doing some benchmarks just to see how well it would run. A very, very tiny chip broke off of this corner, and the fans, I'm guessing it's related to the fan power, the fans would not run. This thing got nuclear hot, literally, like it shut the machine down, and this top bar was super, super hot. And so I had to call an audible and go back to my supply cabinet, and all I had was a white RX 580. But you know what? The performance is identical on these. Now, there is a slight difference in the 2048 SP versus the name badge one, like that one I had back there. But you know what? It's going to work. I'm taking a quick look here. RX 580 doesn't get any support for drivers. Well, I downloaded drivers that worked, but yes. Yeah, so it still plays games on 1080 medium just fine. You'll be surprised in the benchmarks. I know I was. So we'll run some benchmarks here, and I think we're going to see. I like to run two different benchmarks. The build's going to go pretty quick. So I'm not filibustering here. I'm just taking you through all of the parts that we're going to use. But I tend to like to get at least 60 frames a second, and that card gets that 60 frames a second. We're on to our last piece, and that's actually the storage. So storage is an area that is really personal to what you think you're going to want to spend. This is a Crucial P5. It's a really solid NVMe drive. I love all the Crucial series. I believe they have the P3 now, which is also, I think, a little bit more budget friendly. But this is only a 512 gig, but we had to make some cuts somewhere to stay under 550. Now that's going to play World of Warcraft. It's going to do Windows and maybe one or two other games at most. But games are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So got American checking in. We got the whole gang tonight. Look at that. He says the 550 XT is my go-to now versus the 580. But I tell you, try to find one for 50, 60 bucks because when we saved that kind of money, we were able to include something else. So you can get a faster GPU, but then you won't have this monitor. Now, this monitor was sent to me by ViewEdge to do a full review on. Now, we did take a quick look at it earlier in a previous show. It is a 27-inch, 180 hertz 1080p monitor, and it's $109. So you can't beat that price for a gaming monitor, and I believe it might change if you watch the sales. It's normally $149, but I see it on sale a lot. It was $109 today. Let me go take a look and see if I actually have the specs. If you're just tuning in, this is John the Net Guy. We are doing a completely live show today. We're doing a PC build, or just about to jump into it. And this is the gaming monitor over here. 27-inch 1080p IPS screen, 110% of sRGB. So they're saying that it's got a high, color on this one, high color saturation, which will be really cool to see. And it says that it's HDR10. Now, true HDR10 certification requires an incredible high nits of peak brightness. I don't know if that has it. We're not going to go to that level of testing today, but it is going to be the monitor that keeps us under budget, because getting that 27-inch monitor, that's kind of the new 24 these days. But getting that 27-inch monitor for $110 is going to keep us at that 550. So we're spending almost 20% of our budget here on a monitor. And then lastly, I'll pull up the Tough Gaming GT301. Now, normally, if you're building an MATX board, you would go with an MATX case. In this case, my friend was asking what I had available. I'll bring you guys up on the side camera. We haven't used that much tonight. So I was going to show you what's available. This one has this aggressive front end with 3 addressable RGB fans here. You're going to have this pattern that we've got here, this like woven cloth. It is going to handle a full-size ATX motherboard in here. So you're going to have all of those slots. Overall, got mesh filters, got that kind of I'm calling it the tank here because it has all of these sharp angles. It's all plastic, but then you got your power recessed here, and you've got your standard 2 USBs up top. So not a bad look for a case overall. And this case is about 90 bucks right now. I picked it up on sale the other day and I kept it in stock. There are different cases you can use, like the other case that I had actually in the build guide, which will keep you under budget. Now that's an MATX case and it's not going to have all the fancy fans that you want. But again, each build is personal to you. This one's going to come in at about 640 as built for this person, which is going to keep them right in the budget that they wanted. And so I'm very excited about that. Now, as I normally do, I would normally build on the motherboard box, but I don't have that sitting out. So I'm going to go ahead and start this build today. We're going to build it right here on the GPU box. So I'm going to move some things around and I'm going to go through the process of what I do. And you're welcome to ask questions. There is a lot of PC builders in the chat here today. That's kind of exciting. I love to see all the friends checking in. With this many people, you're going to get a lot of opinions and a lot of good information, which is important when you're building a PC. So if this is your first time here, just let them know in the chat. They don't bite. And if you have questions about this build or any other build that you want, ask away. That's what this is here for. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the side camera up here. So the CPU has already been installed. I've done lots of videos about installing CPUs. So there's the CPU. The important thing is to make sure that the corner, when you're installing it, the notch matches that little gold or the little diamond, or is it a triangle? Triangle. Here we go. We'll go on the top down. So this little triangle matches on the motherboard, and that the CPU is going to fit in there. So that's going to work out really good. Now, we didn't talk about CPU cooling, but unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of budget for that. This is going to be the stock cooler. This is one of, again, the few that comes with the stock cooler. Some of the higher ones, like the 5800X, the X3D, or others, they don't actually come with a cooler anymore because they expect you to use some additional cooling. Now, what's going to be neat here is AMD now includes the thermal pad on their coolers. So I'm not going to touch it, but you won't have to worry about how much goop to use because it's actually going to be already pasted. So that's good. And then you can decide which way you want your logo to face. If you want the AMD there, you can rotate the AMD around here to get it the right direction. I'm looking to see, this is the motherboard backplate. I'm going to go ahead and align it real quick, and we're going to get to building. Now, I was planning, I'll tell you, to use the phalanx here. There we go. This is the phalanx screwdriver. Now, I may use this until I get frustrated. I have to reach back out to the brand because the first one of these that I got did not actually work. Like, I got it and I couldn't charge it. It was completely dead. This one that I've got has worked on a prior show, and I went and recharged it today. But, as I start to use it, it does not have a ton of torque. And the ergonomics are kind of limited here. So, as I'm trying to just torque down these CPU ones, which again, will take a little bit of torque to go past, you can hear it there. It's struggling there to keep up. And that is on the highest settings. So that is on 3. So you can adjust it by pressing this dot at the top. So 0 is no movement at all. 1, 2, 3 are the different pressure levels. Let's see. Yeah. And so 1 stops way too early. So would I recommend this one? Probably not. On the other hand, it had a really cool idea. Has probably the coolest, I don't know if you call it a bandolier or what, but this has the coolest way of storing all of its bits very succinctly and being able to travel with it. So it's kind of a sad story there, but I do have backups in place, and we're going to use the backups, so that's not a problem. We got a comment from Blind Tech. It says stock cooler is pretty decent. Actually, it is. It is a lot. And if you guys behave, maybe I'll put the chat up on the screen here. I know other people do that. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure it's just engaging. I'm working in a cross pattern here. Blind Tech saying Fantech E1 does a much better job on coolers than that screwdriver. Yes, it does. And they have sent products for review in the past. That's definitely a solid manufacturer there. So while we have the GPU out, while we have other things out, this is a really good opportunity to kind of put everything in order. You can put a GPU in and really get yourself into trouble, because then you're going to have no way to get to, or a very small channel to get to, your NVMe slot. Now, this does have 2 NVMe slots, which is nice. I'm the kind of guy that will put everything in here if I can ahead of time. I'll get as much as I can loaded before I put it in the case. Sometimes with the AIOs, it's a little hard. And with any build like this, I try to build the machine ahead of time just to make sure I got all good parts. I don't want to have to sit here and diagnose for you. Now, when you're doing this the first time, so this is your overly long cable. I'm going to probably loop it one time at least over here, just to burn up a little bit of the cable length. And then you have a very small indicator on this motherboard. It says CPU opt and CPU fan. So that means that this is for the water pump, if I had one, and the bottom one is actually for the fan itself. So these are PWM slots. Okay, and I'll tuck that down so it looks nice. I've got that. Then I've got my memory in there. I'm just gonna make sure that is all the way down. I'm sorry, I've got my storage in there. Let's grab the RAM. Now the RAM's only gonna fit one way. Start, if you check the motherboard, it'll tell you, but usually you start on the second in, so it's number 2, number 4. So you go there and there. Gives you some room for your coolers too. Slide that in. Now, once you've got the first one in, they only fit one way, so they're actually offset a little bit and angled. Once you get the first one in, just match up the logo or the label if you can, and then you can install it that way. I like to install it straight up and down on these other ones. There's no need to angle it or rock it or anything, and then push straight down, latches in, just like that. We're gonna go ahead and try the Thermaltake power supply here, and then we'll drop the GPU in last. So we're just getting all the cables out. Now, most of the time you can install the power supply in the cases 2 ways. You can install them with the fan facing up and draw air down and then blow it out of the case, or you can install it with the fan facing down and draw air from underneath the case. Maybe it's cooler, and then you can push it out the back. So that's the way that this generally works. And we'll take this all back apart here, at least the power part, as soon as we go to build it in the case. But I do like to get this just hooked up. Now it is going to have a connector for anything that you want. I'm just kind of sorting out what I'm going to use. And I need to do that EPS connector because that's the one I forget, and then everybody laughs at me. So the one that is labeled CPU here, that's the one that's going to go up here in this corner, the EPS or CPU power. Elmas is in here, says a Rolodex of bits. Yeah, it is. I call it a bandolier, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it does. So, oh, that's a great question. Does any company make a electric screwdriver that uses a single 18650 battery and a USB-C recharging? I don't think the batteries are accessible in these. I don't know if you could even fit an 18650 in here. Maybe that is what's in this little center spot, but I don't think so. I don't think it has quite the torque. But that's a great question. I would ask that of the next brand that sends me one of these to review. We're going to find out. So I've done a little bit closer up than I normally do here, but hopefully you guys appreciate that. So you're seeing how we're hooking this up. The contacts that I'm going to touch are these ones right here. They're the power switch, which is the second set back here, second row in from the end on the last pin headers. I just happen to know that because we build 1 million of these. But if it's your first time, that's what I'm going to do. You could check the manual for it, but I'm going to go ahead and put the GPU in now. And then I'm going to add, now the GPU, if it had multiple power connections, you can daisy chain them here like they have, and then you can connect both. But it is recommended that you take a unique set of wires from the PSU. And you can decide if you want to use the end ones or not. In this case, because it's temporary, I'm just going to use the end ones. A lot of times I'll zip tie those back and I'll use the first connection on here just so I know I've got a good connection. So that looks good. Hopefully everybody will catch me if I did anything wrong here before I blow myself up. Make sure you're plugging it into the GPU. I actually had a situation the other day where I was plugging it into the motherboard by accident. We all make mistakes. And it was interesting because I did benchmarks, and the benchmarks were using the GPU, but they were 20% slower on those benchmarks than if I was running in the other slot. I went back and forth, and it was a consistent 20% slower. So that is how it's set up. I'm going to go back over to the side here so you guys can see. There is the system, and I'm going to go ahead and start the power supply. Now, sometimes they'll turn on automatically. If they don't, remember those headers I was talking about, I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to tap this, and I'm looking for those fans to spin. Now, when my GPU wasn't working, almost always the fans will spin on a GPU. When my GPU wasn't working, the fans did not spin at all. And that should have been an indicator, and that thing went practically nuclear. It was crazy how bad that thing was, how hot it went. Now, great news, we already posted. So I can see the spinner going, and we're getting up into our operating system. So I did install a couple benchmarking programs on this when I tested it out. Now, how do you get past the login screen? Like, I'm going to deliver this to somebody, so they're going to want to have an empty machine. You can either do all your setup under, another Windows Microsoft account, a local account, or you can come back and give me 1 second here. You can do all that kind of setup at first, and then go ahead and erase the machine and then do the sys prep. I actually like to do a trick that somebody showed me the other day. I think it's Control Shift F3, and that takes you right into the administrator account. You look like a super hacker when you do it. It takes me right into the administrator account, and then I can immediately go in and start installing software, and then it gives me this option whenever I'm done. I can go ahead and tell it to reset this thing, and it's in the out-of-the-box experience. So just like they brought it home. And that's actually a requirement now when you're selling on some computer websites that I'm not allowed to name because we're on Amazon. So if I come over here and I look at CPU, this is one of the things that's really cool about this chip. It's going to have the 6 hardware cores, but it's going to have 12 threads. So AM4 platform, a lot of games still run incredibly well with the 6-core 12-thread combination. Yes, there's the 7000 series, and yes, there's newer chips coming out all the time, but man, AM4 has a huge, it's kind of like the Chevy V8. You can do so much with it, and then they added the Vortex and all that stuff. So, it is definitely a powerful platform. Memory-wise, you can see here, we're only using a couple gigs for the operating system and whatever's loaded here. So that's good. We've got our solid state drive, and I didn't run the benchmarks on that. Maybe that's one that we'll start with. We got built-in Ethernet on this motherboard. I didn't put the Wi-Fi card in yet. I like to get it running, get everything going, and then put in those things, those final accessories like keyboard, mouse, and all that at the very end. And then here's our GPU. Now, previously, it actually had dual GPUs listed because it had the internal GPU running as well on this chip. But you can see this is the RX 580 2048 SP, and we're using almost nothing of it right now. And we're going to run over to a benchmark, and the one that I like to start with is the Heaven benchmark. The only reason is this is going to be DirectX 11. So DirectX 11 is going to be kind of your Minecraft, your early Fortnite games, and it's a really good test, in my opinion, of performance of those less graphically demanding titles. And I think this is where you're going to see that actually this chip is not as bad as it seems. I'm going to put myself in the corner that doesn't have data. So like if you were playing a game and it looked like that, now I know there's a whole bunch of compression on the internet, a bunch of that kind of stuff going on. But if you were honestly playing a game and it looked like this isn't bad. Like this is totally playable. I'm going to hit F9 and we're going to run the benchmark system here. It's going to be really hard to show you, but I'll read them off. We're getting 78 frames a second on this, and this is at 1080p right now. That we're getting 78 frames a second on this build, which isn't bad at all for a DirectX 11. 1080p medium settings, let's call it game. It looks really good. Anything over 60, a lot of your cheap monitors are going to be limiting you anyway, or if you're using an older television that doesn't do 120. So, you're going to basically be maxing it out as it is. Taking a look real quick here. So I may not let this run all the way through. My poor little laptop today is just like on fire. I don't know what I did to it. Fortnite can do DirectX 12 if you choose. There may be issues on DirectX version. Yeah, so that's a really good point, Blind Tech saying. It comes out with DirectX 11, I believe. I don't think they've defaulted to 12, but you can pick 12 if you want to get the newer driver. That's a really good point there, Blind Tech. And you can also do performance mode, which is another interesting option. If you have a lot of CPU, but not a lot of GPU capability, you can do performance mode. I've seen that on a ton of budget builds. That's a lot of what Zach TexTurf does. He does the performance mode testing because you can get a high number on a very low quality image. But this is a decent quality image. This has been around for many years now, but you can see if you were playing a game and it looked like that, there are a couple stutters here and there, and that could be a variety of things. It could be my compression, it could be the machine, it could be anything. But overall, it looks like it's working good. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of this. We're doing 91 FPS right now, so pretty solid performance, if you ask me, on this one. So we're going to hop out of that. I'm going to jump over to one other benchmark, and that is the superposition benchmark, because that's going to be DirectX 12. And so this is definitely more graphically demanding. So superposition, performance mode, 1080p medium, and we're going to do DirectX. Now this is where the video memory of this comes in. I'm only using 1.3. Let me take a look at my resolution on this. Display settings should be 1080. Yep, so it's on 1080. Another thing is, if you go to advanced display settings, I'm at 60 hertz. You could go higher if you have a monitor that supports it, like the View Edge that we have here. I only have 60 hertz on my capture board, so it's only going to be locked to 60, but it will still, the benchmarks will be accurate. So great question there. I wish the Blackmagic had a way for me to zoom in on a specific area of the screen. Unfortunately, it doesn't, and I don't want to mess up the benchmarking here. So I'll try to read it off, but we're basically starting out at 57 frames per second on this. So you're right at that 60 frames per second rate that I like. We're going to get more graphically demanding as it loads textures and other stuff. And so, you know, the scene's going to get more complicated, and that's going to drive this a little bit harder. Still above 50. Let me know in the chat what you think your absolute minimum performance is for a gaming machine. We're talking 60 frames a second, DirectX 12 here, mid 50s, on a machine that is going to be $550 with the GPU, a monitor, a keyboard, mouse, Wi-Fi, and everything out the door. So pretty impressive numbers. If you're going to play Minecraft, Roblox, those kind of things, we'll see what World of Warcraft does. I don't play World of Warcraft, so I don't usually benchmark with it, but it would be interesting to see what the benchmark would actually be here on something like WoW. So I'll let them tell me when they get that set up, and we'll have him report back if it's running good. I know that he has an RX 580 in the family machine that I built for him, because it was really just to be a Plex server. And so we just wanted a GPU that could do some encoding, and they've been playing on it and happy with it. So this is going to match that family machine that he's got. I'm also just kind of feeling around for thermals. You know, I do feel heat coming off the GPU here, but the fans are spinning, which is good. I think I told you guys a little bit earlier, my poor GPU died, the one I had in here that I was going to use. And it was really just from mishandling. It was all me. I had it in a box, and I was dropping stuff in it. I have a GPU box with GPUs in it. I think I need to print like separators for my GPUs now, and I can't stack them like I do anymore. So, okay, here we go. So Jonathan's saying, I'm more of a used PC kind of guy, so I'm thinking 1080p high around 60 FPS. I think this, is that what you think World of Warcraft will play? Should be good. Coffee's checking in, goes, 30 FPS is perfect for a cinematic experience, if you ask Ubisoft. I thought that was really super funny, because, you know, we've got all these frame blending, DLSS, FSR, all these frame generation technologies that we're doing right now. And if you think about it, Tom Cruise did a whole thing about movies being in 24 frames and why it was as the director intended, and all of these motion flow and other technologies were garbage. And I'm like, no, I actually like them. I like it when I can actually see my movie properly. So I thought that was funny. Let me try something here. I can try another trick, so maybe we can see them both. Oh, I got almost there. Let's try that. So there we go. You can see me and the benchmark running side by side here. It's doing really well on the benchmark. Again, there was a lot of textures, a lot of stuff going on there. 7,037 points. Now, I don't know how that scores against your GPU, but if you wanted to do that, that's another beauty of this, is you can download these free benchmarking programs, and you can test what you've got in your PC and your budget build. And again, probably beat this pretty dramatically. But you know, I've spent more than $550 on a single graphics card before, almost twice that, in fact. So don't expect too much. I'm going to do one last test here before we drop it in, just for those that are sticking around to see the actual build. And I'm going to use the Crystal Mark here. And this is the SSD benchmarking. Let's replace them all. It looks like I already had it extracted. So I'm going to use this to benchmark the solid state drive that's in here. So this is the Crucial P5. Now it's got some miles on the odometer of this one, so it's not like a brand new drive test that would be empty, but the one that you purchase from Amazon would be. And then we're going to go ahead and hit all here. BC Czech City goes, I'll stick with my 24 FPS likes the movies. Man, I can't imagine playing a game in 24 FPS and going, man, this is so cinematic. It'd be great. Number right off the bat. So this is going to take quite a while to run, unfortunately. So we'll just kind of filibuster here as we go through. The first number immediately is 3,400 megabytes per second. That's 3.5 gigs a second. So your games, your 1% lows while your game is loading, those are hopefully going to be less noticeable with a chip like this. And you know what? I think I can go back to my side-by-side view. So we'll let this run for a little bit and we'll talk about tech here. So the first number is just the pure drag race. This is like how fast can I write bits in a read bits in a continuous line. And that's 3,446 megabytes apparently. The next number, they're starting to do a little smaller reads. And so there's going to get to the point where we're doing random reads and writes. So this is going to be doing in smaller chunks. The next one's going to be even smaller. And it does 5 tests of each. That's why this takes a little bit, a couple, 2-3 minutes to run, because it's going through these individually. And then it gives it a little break in between. And what's interesting about these controllers is the more you use them, the more bits have been used. And so it has to relocate sectors. If it does have bad sectors in the memory, unlike an old hard drive, where you start to get some dust or scratches or whatever it is that's causing it, these NVMEs use different cells. And so they'll move entire sections of data to a different cell, and they'll try to do wear leveling, they call it. So that's another thing about the technology in here. Some of these, in this case, it's got a 465 gig C drive. There's some for reserve and some for Windows and whatnot. But in this case, there's some that's going to be hidden in here that you're not accessing in the drive controller, because it's going to be able to do that wear leveling. I'm interested in the write speed. That's the next one coming right up here. Got about 10 seconds and we'll see what that one is. So the write speed is really important if you're going to be doing any sort of downloads, if you're extracting stuff. That's where you're going to actually need it. If you're gaming, a lot of times it's the read speed. So you'll see some like the Sabrent Rocket has like a 5,000 megabyte per second read and like 1,000 on the right side. It's super slow writing, but it was because they leaned more towards the read. This one's starting to come back up to the 3,000 range. A lot of them don't guarantee the write speeds. They'll guarantee the read as a minimum, but this is almost 3,000 megabytes per second on a continuous write basis. So that's really sweet here. And then we're going to see as we do more random writes, we'll let this go a little bit and then we'll shut down, and then we're going to throw this into that case. I think I've got everything in here that we were looking at. I normally will benchmark the machine for at least a day using AIDA64 or something else just to burn it in. And actually that was important because I found out that fan problem on my other GPU. But let me know in the chat what you guys do for benchmarking and burn-in testing on your machines. Are you burn-in testing your new builds? Do you use any specific software or tools to do that? I'd love to know that. That'd be really cool. So I'm zooming back out. We're going to go back to the computer here. And whoa, I got to get that one. That's me in the corner. That's me in the spotlight. We are at 406 on the more random writes here, and I'll see it going down as low as 50, 60 usually. So this third line here is what your normal maximum performance would be on a traditional SSD. And you can see the difference now that the NVMe drives have made. And they're a lot smaller and a lot more compact, less cables, less wires. Can make for a much cleaner build. So that's why we like those. And we'll let this last benchmark run. I do have Cinebench, but I'm not going to run that until after the show, and I'll put those numbers out so you can see if you're really curious about this CPU. But like I said, if you follow the guide down there in the show notes here, it'll tell you exactly how to get this PC for $550. You got to make a couple little concessions from what I have here. I just happen to have these parts available to me, and you'll be able to get that. So looks like 128 megabytes and on the random write and 54 on the read. So very interesting. Green's checking in on his benchmarking. Cinebench, CPU-Z, Unigen Heaven bench. Nice. Good combination. I like that. Blind's also checking in, goes, I don't do SSD testing, but I use 3D Mark, Unigen Superposition, and Heaven benchmark. But I do test my PCs with Fortnite, Apex, and COD. There we go. Never spending $70 on Black Ops 6. I'm with you there. I don't play enough. It's actually criminal how little time I get to play on the machines that I build. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this machine down. Give me 1 second. I need to be able to see a couple things. I'm going to shut it down gracefully, hopefully. And we're going to do that. And then I'm going to turn it off. And we're going to get the case out here. And I want to be able to take a quick look at this case because I have not built in this case before. So it is a little bit exciting to me when you get to build in a new case for the first time. I'm going to unplug quite a bit of this, and then we're going to put it all inside that case. So power supply has to come out. So I'm going to remove the power supply connectors. Memory, CPU cooler, I'm going to leave in. GPU is going to have to come out technically. Just makes it easier. Move all this over to the side. I do need to remove my little tiny wireless dongle for my mouse. But yeah, not only do we do YouTube here, we actually build gaming computers, and I do sell gaming computers locally. I don't sell them to people I don't know, so you're super lucky if you know me, I guess, because you can buy one of these. So this is that Asus TUF GT301. Pretty aggressive looking case. I'm calling it the tank. I wish that black front would come up a little bit. I think when we have the RGB going through, it'll look really cool. But you see that kind of angular design. It's molded up through the top. It does have a removable tempered glass side. Now, I'm not going to sadly get to pull the peel on this one. I let my customers do that the first time, especially if this is going to a young kid. I want to make sure he gets to do that on his first gaming machine. Let's take a look inside. I actually did kind of peek in here earlier, and I was pretty impressed with the design. You know, it's funny. A lot of times you look inside one of these things, and they're very nondescript. They're really basic. But take a look at this push test. This does not move much at all. Like all of this angles that they put on everything, the stamping, it actually provides additional reinforcement. So this thing is pretty strong. I see a lot of cable notches here for running cables. There's glands around the different cable holes. You don't get that on a lot of budget cases. So in general, this thing's been built pretty nicely. So looks pretty good. Let's look at the fans on the front. These are supposedly PWM fans as well. I got to check and make sure they're addressable, but I'm guessing because they went for the PWM that they would be. On the bottom, I was thinking about putting some additional fans here, but it actually does have, it's hard to see, but it actually has the TUF Gaming logo here. It has a removable SSD bracket. So if you had an SSD drive, you could throw that in there. And then it has a blacked out rear fan. So that's kind of an interesting choice that they made the rear fan black. That's, you know, up to each person, but that was kind of an interesting choice to go with, not to do RGB back there. Now I'm going to bring the side camera here. So hopefully you can see this. Man, they definitely put those back screws down. It's just my day-to-day, I tell you. So I'm going to have to use the real screwdriver, the manly one. So to unloosen those. But these are captive screws. I like that on all of the case. I can't tell you how many of these screws I lose for panels. But these are captive, meaning that they're just going to stay in. They're not falling out onto the table. We're going to slide back. Now, did I see a manual in here? I haven't looked in the back yet, so I have not seen a manual yet. Okay, there it is. All of our stuff nicely kept in the back here. Look like this is the headphone bracket, or must be, that's available for that front side. I'll have to see how that installs based on the manual. We're going to have some zip ties, which I like. It's going to have a screw set, and it's going to have a full manual. So not bad. Asus motherboard, Asus case. Now you can obviously mix and match, but it's kind of neat. I've had some really nice TUF Gaming GPUs and motherboards. That would have been a cool combination for this one. I'm going to take these all out here. So there we go. And I want to take a look just real quick. Let's see on the top down. So this is the manual. It's going to tell you how to install it. If you've never done it before, it's obviously easier to watch sometimes the YouTube channel, but it's going to tell you how to install the power supply, how to take the sides off, which hopefully you've taken the sides off at this point, installing the cooler motherboard, and don't forget the IO shield. That's always important. It's going to give you your IO information. So it's going to have reset. It's interesting because it doesn't have it has an LED switch here, but it doesn't have it put out as a pinout. So that's going to be interesting to see how they do that. Looks like it has an addressable RGB controller hub. I did not see that, but let's take, yeah, there it is. It's on the back. We'll take a look at that here in a second. So it is going to have addressable RGB and PWM capability with hopefully motherboard support. So that's really cool. That's why it doesn't have a button that goes to your pass-through. So very cool. Tells you about turning it on. If you hold the button for 5 seconds, that does the Aura sync to the motherboard. So that's pretty cool here. A lot nicer manual, to be honest, than a lot of the budget ones I'm used to. Let's take a look here. I'm just thinking of AVE and the joke he would have made about that. If you guys know that YouTuber, he would not let that go. So we're looking on the back side here. It actually does have a full addressable RGB controller. Now what's interesting is it has additional 3 additional RGB outputs, which is really cool because that motherboard only has one, but this is giving you a breakout. You don't have to buy that. It looks like it has hard drive rails in here, some additional errata in there, and then it has these hard drive trays that are removable. Now we didn't talk about putting a game drive in here, but that's been super popular, is to slap a game drive in these, and it works really, really well. So let's get started. I like to do the PSU in the back first here, get the power going, gets the weight into the bottom. And this is what I was talking about earlier about deciding which direction you want to put in. So you got a fan, and you can decide on the orientation. You want fan up, where it's pulling from inside the case and going out the back, or do you want fan down and it's drawing from underneath the case? And in this case, I'm actually going to go with the fan down orientation. I'm going to see, I did fix mount my GoPro here. I'm going to see how much it can see practically here. If I put it at that angle, and I'm going to put myself in the corner here. Nobody puts baby in the corner, but I'm going to put myself up here in the corner so you can see me while I'm talking. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this down here. And it looks like it has room for a larger PSU, but not much. And that's always something you got to watch out for, is these PSUs are just, they've got some really high wattage ones, but they get longer and you can't fit them in. So very nice. If this is your first time here, you're tuning in to John the Net Guy. This is a weekly show on every Tuesday where I normally check out cool products and tech on Amazon. My editor is getting a little behind this week. We had a huge show last week with 12 products and some long form videos that he's working on. So I said, you know what, let me do a PC build this week. He'll give him a little bit of time to catch up, because he takes the content that we're making here and makes it consumable on Amazon. There we go. Just getting the whole of the line up on this power supply. I'm going to loosen them a little bit, see how much play is in here. That should, there we go. That's much better. Just installing that. Taking a look at the chat. Oh, interesting. Bodyduction.com, cheap views online. If one of the mods wants to knock that guy out of there, I think we'll see if that person posts anything else on there. But if that person posts anything, we'll knock them out. We can do that. And I think my blind tech, I think you're mod, but unfortunately you are on a different account probably now, aren't you? I think your other account got whacked. So I'm going to go ahead and click on one of the products in Amazon and say, hey, Amazon, send. I usually put the motherboard down to the case first. That way I don't have to deal with the with the bulge in the cables behind the case when laying down. You know, that's a really good point too. Another different way to do it. That's from Blind Tech. He likes to put the motherboard in first. So yeah, all different options here. You know, in some of these cases, if I wasn't going to use those 3.5-inch drives, I might pull that whole tray out and just take that out completely. So we don't have that, and then I would shove everything underneath there. But that's a really good point, yeah, as well. You learn something new every day. So yeah, what he's talking about is when you lay the motherboard down like this, when you lay the case down, the motherboard has to have somewhere to go. And when I'm putting that in, you could potentially run into problems there. But yeah, good question on that. I'm going to go ahead and install the motherboard now that I got the power supply in. And I'm going to go ahead and look at the standoffs. And then I also need to put the I/O shield. So one thing on the standoffs here, you can actually do this by trial and error. You can do it just by fitting. Here, I'm going to get you a little bit closer. So all of your ATX boards, there is going to be room in this one. And again, that was known because I just happen to have extra space here. There is going to be extra room. So your standard AT X goes here, your MAT here, and your ITX go over here only. But what I'm looking for is that one lines up, this one, and this one line up. There's always one in the center here, which lines up. That one lines up. There is no one in the corner back here, and there are two. So basically, by doing that, I can decide that these two need to move up one set. So that can work pretty well. And you know what's funny is the other day I actually found my dedicated socket for removing those standoffs. And you know what? It's actually a dedicated tool. And then I promptly didn't put it in here. So I'm just going to use a pair of pliers to twist this, because sometimes these, especially if they're milled real cheaply, can be really tough to get out. So I'm going to use a quick set of pliers to undo that. Hey, Joe says, Happy New Year, Net Guy Reviews. Happy New Year to you, Joe. Thanks for checking in. I am doing a video every single day. Now, when I say that, that is a product review, product demo video every single day. So you're going to see something posted on this channel, usually at 4 o'clock. If I'm doing a stream at 4, though, I actually have to back it off a little bit. I have to do it a little bit. I do it at 9 a.m. on Tuesdays. I post my review videos. So you're going to get a video every single day, and then you're going to get a live stream every week. That's one of the things I'm committed to. Now, I don't know if I can do the live stream every Tuesday. I'm going to try. We are going to be out of town for a couple. So I'm going to have to get creative on how I do those live streams. But Happy New Year, man. Thanks for checking in. Good to see you here. Let us know in the chat, what's the last computer you built? How big of a CPU are we talking here? I'm always curious. I know we had a couple people go to PDX Land. They built some really awesome gaming rigs for that. What's the last computer you built? What kind of chip and GPU did you go with? Did you go Intel? Did you go AMD like this one? AMD was the cost, the affordable leader for a while for affordability. But, some of the Intel stuff came down recently too. So, open this up so I get some airflow in my little tiny office. So there we go. So now I put the standoffs where I want them. I do need that slot cover. So if you forget this, it is a very sad day, because you're going to have to go all the way back to the drawing board and put this back in before you can put everything else. Or you just skip it and you laugh at the computer for the rest of its life because somebody forgot to put that in. So I'm just snapping this through the back, and what that looks like is right here. You can see that slot cover latches in. Make sure that the audio is at the bottom here, or what would be the bottom of the case, and then you have all the other stuff on there. I like it. It's got the ASUS case. It's got the model and serial number, manufacture date. Now, one of the things that case builders and PC builders will often complain about is knockout slot covers, where these slots, you basically knock them out one time and you don't have a choice anymore. Once they're knocked out, they're gone. Or you have to twist out those slot covers of those knockouts, and you can't do it once the board's in place. Now, what's nice about this board just right away is all of these are removable slot covers. So it's actually got full slot covers on every single slot. They're not stamped, which again costs more money when you're making a motherboard like this, or sorry, not a motherboard. When you're making a case like this, it costs more money to do that kind of build and more engineering essentially, but not bad. So that's a plus here. I'm going to slide this down a little bit so I can put my screws out. So this is the screws that come with it. It actually did come, looks like, with a socket adapter. Let me show you what that looks like. If you've never used one of these, this is a socket adapter. It has a Phillips on one side, and then it has a very small bolt. I'm just looking to see if they gave any extra spacers, which they didn't. Motherboard standoffs. They didn't give you any motherboard standoffs, but another thing they also give you is an additional, if you do lose one of those rear case panel screws, the thumb screws, they've got that. So not a bad setup here. I'm actually liking this name brand Asus case. A lot of times with the cheaper budget cases, you won't get these kind of additional features. So just testing the thread on these. I've had some that are not the same threading, and this one looks like it's threaded for the smaller screw sizes. We'll go back to the top. And so what I usually like to do is I like to start out with this one right here. I'm taking a quick look. I love it. Blind Tech says missing the IO shield is basically the same here as rebuilding the whole PC. And Nemus is checking in from Nemus Hardware. Welcome. I don't know if I've seen your channel before, but thank you for joining today. Nemus Dark. Nemus, is that Nemus HW? Yeah. We are building, great question, an AMD. This is a 5600 GT, but if you want to stay within the build parameters to be at 550, you're going to have to go with the 5500, which essentially is the same number of cores. So I'm not too far off that. I think it's 100 megahertz off. They're both PCI Express Gen 3, which is fine because our RX 580 is also Gen 3. So that's what we're building today. Thanks for the question there. And if you are looking to see all of the parts for this, if you visit this thing that's going to be scrolling again across the bottom, you're going to get to see all of the parts for this build on Amazon. In full disclosure, I get a lowly single-digit commission, which pays for cameras, for lights. I do have a new studio set coming out for doing some tool reviews because I've been getting some more tools, and I wanted a non-techie, non-RGB studio, I should say, which is funny because I'm looking at it going, man, maybe I should install RGB. Now, this is kind of funny. I started out the show. You guys remember I was using that little tiny electric screwdriver, which I can't recommend, unfortunately. And you'll see this. I'm actually building with a PH2 from Husky. And it's like a 10-inch, 12-inch, barrel total overall length, probably 14-inch screwdriver. And I absolutely love this because you can sit way back here, use the magnetism of the tip on the screwdriver, and just go way down in there, reach down, and start threading your screws in. And you don't have to worry about spacing around, the fan shroud or something. You can just reach way down in there. I'll show you this angle because it's actually really cool. So yeah, I can get that screw right there. You can see here, and I'm touching the edge of this case, but the edge is not hitting. It's only the barrel of the screwdriver. So even an LTT screwdriver, to get to that, you'd be at an angle like this, right? Because you've got all the body of it. And so you can reach down. I'm even going to hit this EPS connector one way down in the corner. I do think that this is a better screwdriver. How often in PC building do you need a non-PH2 there? Oh yeah, that name is familiar. Oh, right on. Nima says, watch the stream with Noab and your Ace Magician video. Thank you. That Ace Magician story is the one that keeps on giving. I am tempted, don't tell them, but I'm tempted to get their AOC Ace Magician combination machine and take a look at it. I'm not trying to dunk on them or anything. I just want to see what they're building, if they're including real Windows licenses. If you're partnering with a larger company like AOC, I would hope that you're including real Windows licenses at that point. This is the point, speaking of, that we're going to take a look at our GPU. So our GPU is going to go here. So I'm just trying to figure out what slots I need to remove. I'm going to give you guys a new angle, actually, too, because I think as I'm doing some of this might be a better angle for you guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this back cover. A lot of these case manufacturers are making this like cover that goes, a sliding cover in most cases. I don't think this one is sliding now. They make this cover that goes over the rear IO to get these massive GPUs in, probably. So that flips out. That's hinged. I like that. I do like that a lot. So this little cover right here, and hopefully I can show you here. is actually hinged, so you're not going to drop it or lose it. So I'm liking that. And we're going to go second slot and third slot. This is a 2-slot GPU. And the nice thing about this case too is if he wants to go with a massive GPU, he can go, I think, up to 300 millimeters deep on this thing. So he can go with a huge GPU. Another nice thing about this is they don't put any of the I/O. I've had a motherboard before from ASRock that they put the USB-C right there, and they ended up giving away free 90-degree adapters because all the GPUs were hitting it. You know, the GPUs got super long and big. So I'll tell my wife that. And then we put this in here. Okay, so far the fit and finish on this case has been superb. I haven't had any issues. Everything looks good. Having these removable slot covers is nice. I don't know why it is, but it seems like on every case, the HDMI ports are always really encroaching on the metal. Same thing on this as well. And I was asking earlier about what's the latest machine people built. And Joe's checking in. Very cool. Very similar build. He's got the 4500 in it. Like new EVGA 960, a 240 gig SSD, 1 terabyte drive. Actually, that's a cool machine. That's very similar to what we're building here. That probably was a good budget build, I'm guessing. So that's definitely going to be an economical machine with some of those parts. And Blind Tech saying, doing a review on a case I bought from Newegg for the Ryzen 5 3600X RX 580 I just built. So it's kind of funny, you know, I picked a 580 here and people were giving me a hard time about it, but you know, the 3600 has been around a very long time. I had one of those chips laying around here only to flash AM4 boards for the 5000 series that may have not gotten a flash. But I think I eventually got rid of that one. But no, that's a popular chip too, a predecessor to the chip that's in this one. So we've got our GPU in. Now we got to do our wiring. This doesn't take too long, luckily, because we've got all of our stuff here. I like to do larger to smaller, and I do like, especially when we're doing something, I'm gonna, you know, my GoPro is not set bright enough. And again, these are all camera things I'm noticing that you might not, but I tend to go with the larger to the smaller, and I try to unweave these, especially when we're dealing with non-modular, because once I attach this ATX cable, these are done. I won't be able to weave it out. So what I'm doing is I'm basically weaving here and trying to get all of these spare cables to unconnect from the ATX cable. A modular PSU would be great to cut down on wires, especially with this motherboard, which only needs a few small pieces. But in my case, I'm going to have to go with it. Now, I would love to tuck all of the excess here. We're tucking already. I'm going to use a zip tie actually around this to keep it combined and not get any other wires in between it now that I've done this. These are the zip ties that came with the case, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to give one more zip tie up here. I have started to cable manage a lot more, especially of my builds, just because when somebody opens the back of their case eventually, or maybe they take it for service, you don't want your cables flying around everywhere. How many people do cable management on their own builds versus any PCs you sell? It would be interesting to see, you know, how much cable management gets done. And do you do like level 5 million cable management, or you do just minimal cable management? I'm going to peek around to the front, and it looks like I can choose to go through either slot. I'm actually probably going to go through the top slot to give myself a little bit more room. So there we go. There was a fan header up here hidden back up at the top, and that is going to go to either the water pump or the fan optional or to a case. Well, I'm going to lay it back down here. So then you can see what I'm doing is I'm connecting this power supply cable, the ATX cable, to the motherboard. And I'm going to roll this cable over so that it fits through that slot. I see the next one here just available is that USB type, or the USB 3 header. So I'm going to take that. Now these are all kind of bundled together, but My I/O is scattered, so I'm going to start to unbundle these cables. And then I'm going to take this cable and we're going to head it back up where it needs to go. So it's going to come up through the middle. So there's a lot of back and forth here. It's hard because normally I would just probably leave it standing and do a lot of this, or push them through and leave it laying down. But in this case, I want to show you where they go. So that's going to go to the blue connector. And that's going to look like the older, if you guys remember, and I'm totally dating myself, but that almost looks like a game controller connector, like I think it was a 15. No, it was more than that. So it looks like the rest of the fans are all connected to this one breakout, and I'm just trying to make sure I get the cables routed so they're not pinching anything. Look here. Elmo's checking in, says, I spend more time doing cable management than actually building. Oh man, that's so awesome. It's nice when you can take pride in building something, especially if you're building it for yourself, even, or even better when you're building for somebody else and it doesn't look like trash when it's done. I can tell when I've seen like a custom build and you open it up and you're like, okay, this person really cared about the final result. What I'm looking here is this is letting me take some of these wires through, but I don't have enough. So I like the fact that they've pre-tied a lot of these. I'll show you here. So they've tied a lot of these wires down, and that's nice, but for the fans that are all in the front, it's going basically around this, and it's really limiting the amount of cable that I have here for this harness. And I need to take this cable and I need to run it through the front of the PC here, through the front, and then I got to go down across the motherboard to the lower one, and this one I'm going to go to the upper CPU fan spot. So doing that, there's a lot of back and forth here. So I grabbed this one and I'm going to take it across the bottom. We're going to connect it below the GPU here, and that's a PWM style. I'm going to tuck that cable under there. Not bad. Then I'm going to grab the other one and I'm going to attach it up here to the CPU optional. That's actually the water pump. I've got a better idea on this one. I can actually take it and plug it down here to the chassis. So this is another header that's designed. And that is a 3-pin. So this back fan on this one is not PWM, whereas it looks like the other one does have PWM, or it does not. Oh, no, these are not PWM. So these fans are going to be running at a kind of a medium speed. Joe's asking, what case are you using? The case looks different than the one linked. So this is the GT301. It's a nice looking case, and it's actually what I had available in stock. But if you want to stay at the 550, I did do, I think it's the Cooler Master, the Q300L, because that one was on super ridiculous sale. So sometimes you got to make concessions if you want that. In this case, the build I think is going to come out at exactly 640 because I had to go a little bit higher for that. Now I am going to run the power supply for the EPS. I could have done this a little bit earlier. This is that one connector that goes way up top. If I had a top mounted AIO, I might have gone even earlier to attach this, but I'm going to go ahead and put those 8 pins up here, connect that. I usually do the next one. I tuck this all the way in the back here. Getting these out of the way. I do see an addressable RGB here, so I'm going to get that out. I'm going to probably do the PCI Express next. So this PCI Express one is going to have to come out kind of in the middle here. So I'm sending it through. Now this is going to be an interesting one. I mentioned earlier, which end of the connector do you use? Do you use the first one or do you use the second one? Now the second one, if I had enough room, I could tie this back and hide it and make it look really clean. In this case, if I go to the first one, I can actually get rid of a bunch of excess cable by having it just go back and forth, and then I can zip tie it together. I'll show you what that looks like. So I'll take that cable that's here. You can wrap the zip tie up in this area Don't tighten it down all the way. Slide the cable down here. Slide it down, slide it down, slide it down. Get those as straight as you can. And then tighten that zip tie down there a little bit. And so it doesn't hit the fans, go down here and clip off a little bit. I'm going to leave a little extra just in case I need to tighten it more. And now I've got a little bit cleaner looking cabling. And then this one, I'm going to have to zip tie up out of the way later. That's that chassis. Okay, we're getting down to the wire here. I've only got a couple more cables to go. So these are going to be your SATA cables. These, or SATA. SATA, tomato. I love how many different pronunciations people have for it. And of course, like GPU selection, they're all wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and stuff this cable down in here. So as I'm doing this, you'll see there's not a ton of extra room. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to shove all of this down in this area of the power supply basement, because I think this is a non-modular power supply. So I don't get a lot of extra room to play with. But as I get this I/O run through here, which I'm going to run that through that hole. And then this is an extra. This is an old Molex, which we don't need. Sometimes I'll put these inside the drive cage area, but I may actually put a drive in soon. And actually, this one was audio. And I know that audio is almost always in the back of the motherboard here. So I'm going to run it towards the back. And then we have some front panel and addressable RGB. So I know that the addressable RGB header is in the middle. I'm going to run that through the middle hole here. So I'm kind of doing like a lot of these at once, and you're going to get fast. The more PCs you build, you're going to be able to do this quicker. Unless you're PC Tech Hustle, then it's 6 hours every build. But he builds a massive, in his defense, massive computers. Computers with cases that could fit 2 motherboards in them. So what I did is I put all of this I/O through and jammed it right into the GPU. So in this case, I have power LED plus and minus. I've got a reset switch, and then I have a power switch. I don't have a hard drive LED on this, which is interesting. So my power switch, I know, is the second one here. And if you don't know which ones these are by heart, feel free to use your motherboard's manual. That's what it's there for. Sorry for the lighting on this. It's really hard with an all-black case, motherboard, and whatnot to do this. And you're like, oh my gosh, why does he have that bright white GPU? It must be a style thing. No, it's not, because if you were here a little bit earlier, this is the GPU that was supposed to go in this. And look at how cool and industrial that would look. This one is the backup GPU that I had to throw in here because it's the same exact GPU as far as performance. I had to throw this in because that other one got damaged, and that happens sometimes. It's why we benchmark, and it's why we check our builds. But I had a panic attack when that thing did not, the fans were not working on it. So I think I busted a chip off of the back of it just in packaging, and I was not able to do it. Now this last one I'm connecting here is the front panel audio. So if you have a headset, your headset's not working, odds are somebody didn't connect this right. I don't have to do any SATA ports. I do have to do these other wires here so they stay out of the GPU. This is a reset switch, which I know is the next row below the power switch, which people almost never use. And then I have the power LED, which I know the plus goes to the rear, and the negative goes more towards the power switch. So I can do that. If I've done all that properly, which I think I have, then this whole machine is ready to boot up. And I think I've done all of that. Keep this out of the way. Memory slots closed. I think we're in good shape. So this is always the funnest part of the event, which is, will it post? This is a great opportunity to embarrass me, to see, will I get lucky and the machine just happens to boot up? It's going to boot up over there if everything works right. I'm going to plug my items in here. I'm going to do USB. Now, remember, when you're hooking up your HDMI, go into the GPU. There's a 20% performance hit if you don't. Plugging in my network cable, and I'll plug in my power supply, which is turned off right now. So far, this is John the Night Guy. We're building in the Asus GT301, the tank, I'm calling it. I'm going to turn it on, and then I'm going to hit the power button. I see motherboard lights, so I think there's some power to the motherboard at least. And there we go. It's lit. The RGB is coming up here. Not bad. I think I can give you a better view through the side here. Let's see. There you go. Now, I did get a warning here, checking devices. The system posted into safe mode. Memories here. CPU speed is 3600 because the previous post attempt failed. I think I shut it off when it was booting. It's interesting that its clock speed is 3600 on that. Let's see if I do that. Will it reboot? And we'll see if we're getting into the XMP. So it did boot up. Technically, it did post. You're getting to see the RGB in the front. We do have an RGB button, so I can change the different colors, which is pretty slick. Bring you guys back over here on the front side so you can see. Technically, you'd be able to see the lights through that camera. The back fan is blowing, but it's not RGB, so you won't see anything out of that one. And that GPU sticks out like a sore thumb. Oh my gosh, that bright white GPU. No, Zach, don't tear me one. I did not build with that on purpose. Late in the day, had a problem, so I had to swap it out. But there's your RGB, changing colors. It's got definitely different chase patterns. If I hold it down, that'll switch over to motherboard after 5 seconds, which apparently motherboard has nothing because it's in the BIOS. So there we go. Now let's bring up the BIOS. We'll take a quick look there on the BIOS. Now, the one thing I'm looking for is the DOCP or XMP profile. So that is set to 3200. I think what happened was I shut it down when it was in the middle of a post process. So that's why it complained about that first boot. Otherwise, it should have gone right up into Windows, which I think it's going to do here. So we're going to boot up into Windows and see if it comes up. Take a look at the chat real quick. 10 gig plus card. There we go. PyKVM, those would be awesome. Molex, Puke, I love it. With the AMD chips, without the G, there's no video feed on the motherboard. That's true too. So if you went with the 5500 to stay in budget, but you forgot to buy a GPU for some reason, you wouldn't get anything out of it. Coffee's running a little behind, but oh, he got super lucky. He's got a Minis Forum, the BD790i with a Ryzen 7945HX. That's a huge chip. That is this like behemoth from a performance perspective. That's awesome. 4 terabyte NVMe. To be honest, I don't even have a 4 terabyte NVMe personally yet. And an RTX 3070 with a Lian Li 750. That's a good machine. I like that. I like the choices there. And DDR5 with a Fractal Terra in Jade. Oh man, that's a good looking machine. I wish throw that in the Discord and maybe I can pull it up one of these times here. That would be really cool if you got a really cool picture of that. Friar Duck's got a rant here, and I'm with you, my friend. Case makers have not standardized on a single front panel connector. The layout hasn't changed in decades. It's true. And actually, oh gosh, what was the one I was working on the other day? Can't remember if it was a Cooler Master or if it was the Thermal Take, but they had actually included an IO block. Like all of their cables were in a pre-wired block. So that made it a little bit easier. Now, my cable management, I haven't zip tied anything down, but I'm just going to kind of push this back in so we can see what it looks like when the side panels are on. Get a good look at this thing. So far, fit and finish on this case, I'll have to say, the weight of the case is heavier than a lot of the budget cases. That's one of the things I've had to worry about in the past is these more affordable, I should say, cases just don't have the weight in them. They're made with less metal. So this one has a very positive locking front end, but be very careful that you actually lock it because it did pop out on me. I almost lost the front end, but it was tied in the back. So here we go. I'm going to tie that up. And we'll take a good look and see what she looks like. There's the right camera. Why am I tilted? I just realized this. I put the right camera on and I never actually went over and leveled it out. So the whole video today is going to be at an angle. But there you go. So hopefully my editor can work with that. So there's the RGB. You can see it there, kind of reflecting it. Not a bad look. When he pulls this cover off, it's going to look even better. That's it says tempered glass, but it's not really that smoke. So if you have really nice colorful fans in here, this would look really, really nice. Or if you have a really ugly white GPU, you'll see that right away. So Very cool. Elmo, Ernest, I keep calling you Elmo, my friend. Ernest Guzman says Gigabyte includes an adapter to join all the front panel connectors. Yep, absolutely. So I'm going to throw the Wi-Fi in here last because everything else worked. We're going to do an unbox. I'll shut it back down. But we did the performance test first. We did some of the benchmarking first for those that tuned in. Overall, I think it's a pretty nice looking machine. You can get the better lighting there now. So you can see with the front RGB, it has that tough gaming logo across the front. My GoPro's not quite bright enough today, but there it is. Yeah, good looking machine for a kid. If you're 12 years old, I think, you know, not a bad looking device. Now it does have an accessory here. I didn't check to see if it comes off, but I believe this is your headset holder. Let me get you guys from the front so you can see it. So this goes off of this edge here, and I believe you pop this up and then you screw it down and you've got a headset holder. Not a lot of people like to use those, and they might have ones that you buy separately that are better, but that's another option, another accessory that comes with this one. Like I said, I'm going to lay this one back down real quick. Hit the power button and begin the shutdown, and then we're going to put the PCI card in. I'm also going to make sure that I turn it off. We're going to put the one PCI Wi-Fi card in here, and I'm just going to test if it works. This one that I have in the build guide is super cheap. Again, we had to do a lot of concessions to stay on budget. I would look for one technically that had Bluetooth built in. Would be really nice. This one's from Asus also, so he's at least staying in the family. How did I do that? There we go. So we're at least staying in the Asus family. Keep the case, motherboard, and the Asus PCI Express card. I'm sure that's not rebranded by anybody else, but that's going to fit here next to the GPU. It is going to cover slightly that GPU fan, you know. So if this was an ATX motherboard, I might feel a little bit better about putting it down lower. But you could always go USB on it as well. Prior Tuck says, good looking budget case. Well, I wish it was budget friendly as it was. It's about $90, but it does come with 4 fans. It does come with an RGB controller with 3 additional ports, so you could throw in a couple extra fans pretty cheaply here. I shopped all day for cases, man, and I did not see many good deals on cases today. I don't know what it was. So I'm going to put this down in here. You guys can see. And I'll let you see how much of the, if I can, there we go. Trying to get into that motherboard slot. This is not an easy fit. Yeah, see, the whole build went really well, which means that this, putting in this PCI Express card is going to be the bane of my existence. That's exactly how it goes. So it is covering about 30% of the fan. Let me show you how this is. Let me know if you think that's janky. Would that work for you? Would you keep that? Luckily, the fans on the other GPU we want are sit back further, but that's the PCI Express. We could always go USB, but again, you know, Wi-Fi is a backup here in this case for him. He just wants to have the ability. So we could do that. And then I'm going to tighten that down. I'll put these 2 in here. Then I'll put the antennas on, and you'll get to see. We can do a Wi-Fi speed test. How would that be? Would that be fun? We'll see what this. It says it can do 750. I have the Wi-Fi now is about 4 feet away, so we could see if this thing can actually do a speed test here on the local internet. I don't have any QoS set up, I don't think either. So if my stream slows down because I'm doing a speed test, that would be kind of funny. So I'm just screwing in these 2 antennas. It has dual antennas, so it's supposed to be able to be dual band, I'm guessing. There we go. And I'm going to turn it slightly here, just so that the Wi-Fi and it can be better friends. So there we go. I'm going to go ahead and start this up. I'll turn it on. That helps a lot. Taking a look at the chat real quick. Oh, he does not generally like the look of the Asus cases, he says, Blind Tech. Likes NZXT, Corsair, Fractal, etc. That's true. I have not had a lot of Asus cases to work with, so I will reserve judgment just because I have not done a lot of builds in them. Joe is saying Bitphoenix Nova Mesh 8 MATX with 3 fans for $59 on Amazon. I don't know. You could try putting a link in the chat, Joe. I don't think it's going to bounce you out of here, but if you could do that, that'd be really cool. Let's see if you don't mind doing that for me. That would be cool to see what the performance of that thing is. Let me see here. I do have a light on my Wi-Fi, but it's not showing up in the bottom. Sometimes that happens if you have your Ethernet plugged in. So I'm going to remove the Ethernet. We're going to see if maybe this thing's going to require a driver. And if it does, let's see if I have to get that quick start, low profile bracket warranty, PCI Express. You know what? Let's see. I don't see the Wi-Fi popping up there. Oh. Wireless settings. Wi-Fi. System settings. Okay, Wi-Fi is on. Show available networks. Hey, for some reason, it's there, but it did not have it. Now I'm going to hide this network key. You guys won't ever see it. Super secret network key. I'll tell it no if it asks here. This is the fastest network in the house. Oh, nice. The Bitphoenix graph. So Bitphoenix Nova Mesh budget case. So I'm going to try. I'll bring that up real quick here in a second, Joe. Thanks for bringing that up. Anytime we can get a good budget option, I'm down for it. So let's do speedtest.net. Now, if you get super fast fiber, ignore the IP address, everybody. Thank you. If you get super fast fiber, then technically you should go to a different speed test like the app. So this is on Wi-Fi. I'm pushing 300 down. I'm streaming stream right now, multi-streaming, bring it down and up. I got a couple sessions. My kids are probably watching Netflix. So 320 down and over 300 up. We're pushing towards the 400 up. Now my connection is a symmetrical gig. I get usually somewhere around 900 and 850. So this is the Wi-Fi. It is rated for up to 750, it says. So it's able to get to about 300 of that. So it's saying here, download speeds over 100 megabits. We recommend downloading the apps. Now, I don't think I can download apps. Can I get it? Because I don't have a login. Oh, you know what? I think it gave it to me. That will be interesting. So I'm not logged into a Microsoft account because I'm pre-install. But it looks like it's letting me install it. So we'll see if we can get a little bit better test here. I'm on my symmetrical fiber. I'm going to hit go. No ads so far. 2.1 milliseconds and just about the same. It's getting a little bit faster. I can turn the case a little bit so it's not shooting through any metal. We can change the polarity of the antennas a little bit. Oh, over 400. There we go. It liked whatever that was. So there we go. 450 up. Not bad. Looking good. It didn't come through for some reason, Joe, at least not in what I'm doing. So I will pull up Amazon here before we leave. I'd love to show that case off. And then we'll do a quick round of what we have here. I'm going to do one more quick speed test. Hopefully it's not crushing anything. Yeah, now we're doing good. Okay, so it's training up higher. It's getting a higher connection, pushing 500. Okay, so the Asus Wi-Fi card doing pretty good. 500 megabit on Wi-Fi. I'll take that any day. That's about 50 megabytes per second. And then we're doing our upload. Give it a few more seconds to run. It's going to get really close to 500 also upload. So pretty slick for what is a very budget-friendly Wi-Fi card right now if you pick that one up. And that's the Asus model. I think I have the TP-Link one linked, but again, that's just for the budget. Let's take a look if I can do Amazon.com. And then you mentioned it was the Bitphoenix Nova Mesh. Bitphoenix Nova Mesh. Bitphoenix Nova Mesh, 59 bucks, ARGB High Airflow Edition, 3 pre-installed RGB fans. Hopefully that's the right one. Then there's this one over here, which looks to be the same one. There's the Medi Tower. Yeah, so this looks like the right one. 59 bucks. We're not logged in for Prime, and I'm trying to see. It looks like it may have a Prime shipping deal on this one. So not bad. It's a decent looking case. Again, young kid, needs a ton of RGB. This one does have the cutout for the power supply, whereas this one does not. So this one hides the low-grade power supply we're using, but not bad here. 3 + 1, 2.5. It's got different SSD mounts, either or. So yeah, it's really similar in the case capability of the one we've got here. And it's 59 bucks with those fans. So you save about 30 bucks. And Joe's checking in saying, yes, that's the one. That's the MATX. So not a bad looking opportunity there, if that's what you're looking for. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. This is John the Net Guy. If you do decide to purchase anything on here, just full disclosure, I get a single-digit commission of what you're buying here. If you're buying PC parts that you saw today, I want to thank you guys all for tuning in. I'm going to burn-in test this thing, do some more load testing. We'll play some games. I'll do some Cinebench. If you're following me on Twitter or YouTube community or any of those, I'll get that posted out here. So you'll see what this chip, the 5600 GT in this case, can do. And I actually already have a video about the 5500 because I used that on my last build. And you can see the Cinebench on that. But I want to thank you guys all for tuning in. And thank you for, being part of the show. Circuit Rewind says, tell the kids, did it come up? To stop watching Netflix while I'm benchmarking. Absolutely. Well, it did pretty well. So thank you guys all for tuning in. There will be a new video tomorrow, 4 o'clock, and every day in 2025, as well as another stream next Tuesday. Now, next Tuesday's stream, I can tell you, I got a lot of cool stuff that came in. We have, on next Tuesday's stream, the Spider Pro. This is a new data color that just came out. So this one has higher gamut, some other capabilities. I just picked that up from Data Color. That is a replacement for the Spider X series. So this is brand new tech here. I'm trying to think if I've got anything else that I had to mention on this show. I think we're good on that. But tune in next week. I've got a great show planned for that one. And I want to thank you guys all for being here. So just checking the chat. Nothing in there. Thanks you all. And I'm going to cancel the Amazon stream and say goodbye, everybody. And House of Moo, thank you so much. And yeah, you mentioned the case was not on the carousel. I had to do a different one on the carousel. Thank you, though, House of Moo, on that one on Amazon. See you later, Amazon. And see you guys later on the YouTube side. Catch you all in the next one.